to make progress on the collapsed site. Truly, it is a remarkable operation. Our team continues to make incredible progress delayering the pile, and we're working to bring closure to families as quickly as we possibly can. We have now recovered over 14 million pounds of concrete and debris. And through our search and recovery, we have recovered additional victims since our last briefing, and the number of confirmed deaths is now 90. We've also made identifications as the police and medical examiner have continued also to work tirelessly to identify victims and then to notify next of kin in person immediately once identifications are made. 51 of the 90 victims have been identified and their next of kin notified.
71.
What did I say?
You said 50, 71.
Excuse me. 71 victims have been identified and their next of kin notified. And our hearts and minds are always with those we've lost and with the families who are grieving and those that are still waiting. Our detectives are continuing to make progress in their audit and their diligent efforts of researching, verifying all reports on the unaccounted list and working with the families to open missing person police reports. And as a result, we have continued to move reports from the unaccounted to the accounted list. 217 people are now accounted for, and 31 people are potentially unaccounted for. It's also important to stress, as we have before, that we can only truly account for a missing person who is deceased once the identification is made. So the numbers are fluid and will continue to change, and they will continue to change as all of these efforts continue. Last night, we held a memorial walk along Collins Avenue with family members and first responders, Hatzalah, that's been on the scene from the beginning, and members of the Israeli Defense Forces. We took a moment to celebrate and thank the men and women of all the search and rescue teams from Miami-Dade Rescue, from our other cities and states around the country, and of course those from around the world who've been working 24 hours a day for the last 2.5 weeks. And we especially wanted to salute the Israeli team before they're departing today. In recognition of their unrelenting dedication and their compassionate service to our community and to the families and survivors of this tragedy, I was very proud to present the first 2 keys to the county as mayor that I've had the pleasure and pride to present. I presented them to Israeli Commander Golan Baksh and Colonel Edri Alad. So Miami-Dade Fire Rescue also presented the commander and the colonel with badges as we welcomed them as 2 new honorary members of our team, of our Miami-Dade Fire Rescue team. And the Florida Department of Emergency Management honored the IDF as well on behalf of the governor. This walk was truly a beautiful moment for those of us who were able to participate. Members of the community, our first responders, international partners, we all came together once again to recognize the enormous tragedy and the extraordinary efforts of everyone who has helped to get us through these difficult days and their tremendous heroism. So God bless all of our first responders and all of the families who have been so forever affected by this tragedy. Buenos días, aquí estamos en el día 18 de la tragedia. Los esfuerzos de búsqueda y recuperación continuaron interrumpidos durante la noche y a la mañana. Ahora hemos eliminado más de 14 libras de concreto y escombros. A través de la búsqueda y recuperación, hemos recuperado víctimas adicionales desde nuestra última sesión y el número total de muertes confirmadas ahora es 90. También hemos realizado más identificaciones a medida que la policía y los equipos de médicos forenses continúan trabajando incansablemente para identificar a las víctimas y luego notificar a los familiares más cercanos en persona inmediatamente una vez que se hacen las identificaciones. 71 víctimas han sido identificados y sus familiares notificadas. Nuestros corazones están siempre con aquellos que hemos perdido, las familias que están todavía esperando, doliendo, y los que todavía están esperando. Ahora se contabilizan 217 personas y 31 personas están potencialmente desaparecidas. Dios bendiga a nuestros socorristas y a todas las familias afectadas por la tragedia y todos ustedes que están orando con nosotros. Gracias.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And now Surfside Mayor, Charles Burkett.
Good morning. I first want to echo Mayor Cava's comments on the event last night. With all of our teams, all of our search and rescue members, the Israeli team, and the families, it was touching, it was moving, and it was important. There was a deep amount of gratitude there from the families. There was a recognition of the rescue personnel, and there was a rescue of our leaders who had made that search and rescue effort so successful over the past 2 weeks. Successful in that it's gone on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop, and the heart and the soul that all of the members of those teams have put into this effort is just beyond words. I want to touch on a meeting that I had yesterday with our engineer regarding the Champlain North Towers. We are constantly in there doing visual inspections, and as I've said before, core samples had been sent, and apparently we're getting back some of the results. The early results on the concrete is that the concrete strength is very good and at or beyond the levels at which it should be. We're doing they're analyzing the contents and substance of the concrete, and that's going to take a little longer, but in any event, slabs are being measured, thicknesses are being assessed, weight of additional tile and finishes is also being looked at, and all these tests are being done at different times of the day. Given that our engineer has said that those buildings are breathing entities, and that what goes on in the middle of the day is different than what goes on at night. After my visit this morning to the site, the intensity of the work seems to have increased further. It's a very difficult site at this time, as you can imagine. It's been 2 weeks and the conditions are very, very tough. But that hasn't slowed down the work. The search and rescue teams are out there in numbers greater than I've seen all along. There continues to be heavy machinery undertaking very delicate scratching of the surfaces with our teams nearby, so they're utilizing every tool they have. The work is still so delicate that we've even found unbroken wine bottles in the rubble and recovered them. We're also finding personal possessions as small as rings, which are also being returned to the site storage area, categorized, photographed, and saved for the families. The intel on the victims in that building, where they were and where they were expected to be, has been nothing short of incredible. This has been an extremely important component of the search and rescue. It has allowed the search and rescue teams to, on many, many occasions, pinpoint exactly where the victims were ultimately found. The Miami-Dade teams, in partnership with the Israeli team, has been incredibly successful to this end. Lastly, just as a note, one of the things that we've always looking for in the search were the stairwells, because the stairwells were thought to be areas of refuge. Sadly, the stairwells were also in very poor shape, and unfortunately, as a result of my conversation with team leaders out there, didn't yield the results that we had hoped. But in any event, the search goes on. The workers are applying maximum pressure, and the pile continues to go down well below ground level. They're at the point where they're likely seeing the cars in the parking lot. I know they're removing the cars. So anyway, the work continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. And now to provide Creole translation, Leonel Larabor.
Bonjour tout le monde. Jeudi, nous dans 18e jour après tragédie et nous continuons avec l'équipe nous travailler de manière assidue et 14 millions livres béton avec déchets qui sont enlevés sur ce site là et nous fait découverte de nouveaux victimes. Ça porte quantité de victimes qu'on y a à 90, il y a 71 qui déjà identifiés. Pour le moment, quantité de monde que nous trouvons à 217 et quantité qui potentiellement nous trouvons à 31. Hier, nous avons gagné un mémorial dans Collins Avenue pour nous honorer les familles avec premier secouristes. C'était un moment pour nous être capables de partager espoir avec tout le travail que nous avons fait. Maintenant, ça que nous faisons, nous célébrons Mounsayo qui travaille assez dur et nous avons accordé clé avec le commandant Israël là qui était sur place. Et deux clés ça étaient allées à Golan Vatch, qui est commandant Israël là, avec Edric Elad, qui est dans Miami-Dade, dans la police Miami-Dade. Mounsayo, il a gagné titre honoraire que nous baillons, titre honorifique que nous baillons, et c'est avec contribution département Floride pour service d'urgence et dans nos gouverneurs Floride là. Tragédie ça, c'est une tragédie qui est immense. Nous continuons à travailler et nous demandons tout le monde pour nous continuer à espérer que nous sommes capables de sortir en balle. Merci un peu.
Thank you, Mr. Larabor. We're going to be taking questions now. Please wait to be selected and state who the question will be for.
With regards to USA Today, I have two quick questions, if I may. The first one is for Fire Chief Quincy. We've seen, obviously, we talked about the extraordinary amount of dust. It's all last night I could see what appears to be water, maybe trying to tamp that down. Can you talk about why the dust problem seems to be worse now and what the department is doing to try to control it?
Yes, good morning. In regards to the dust overall, the inclement weather throughout this whole operational periods has assisted in the sense of minimizing the dust. Obviously, with the days with minimal rain, as the work continues in cutting and removing debris, it increases the dust production. So we have several different fire trucks, suppression units out, which we dampen the piles as we're going through to try to minimize that impact. We've been air sampling, monitoring all throughout what we would say the hot zone, which is actually the rubble pile where we're working, as well as a perimeter around the warm zone. So we're constantly monitoring the areas, what we're sampling in regards to the dust, the debris, the air particulates in the air, and monitoring around the area as well. So by doing that, by moisturing, it's minimizing the disbursement of the air particulates throughout.
And then, wait, I'm sorry, one quick follow-up, if I may, for Terrence. The structural engineering company that was hired by Surfside to look at the South and North Towers has said that they've been trying to get access for a while to be able to sample the debris from the South Tower, but that Miami-Dade police declared it a crime scene on the first day, and it's not allowing them access to that debris to sample. Can you speak to if that's true, and if so, when, if they're going to get access to that debris to sample?
Good morning. Yes, that is true. Unfortunately, this is an active investigation. Right now, we're recovering victims as we've been. Obviously, the state attorney and NIST are also involved, so it wouldn't be prudent right now to do that. We want to make sure that even though we understand that everybody wants information, but we need to follow our investigative processes. And a later date, when it seemed appropriate, when we have a collaborative agreement on when we could do those things, we will moving forward. But right now, the scene is active, and we really want to keep everything pure and concise.
Any estimate on the time frame there?
Not at this time, ma'am. I can't give it.
Thank you so much.
Let me just add that Surfside has been working collaboratively with the police department and Director Ramirez. We haven't been necessarily denied access. I've had access every single day. I've had access to all those columns. I've taken pictures of those columns. I've actually brought our expert out to those columns. So it's not that we haven't been given access, and I don't think that was not, I think it was maybe mischaracterized. I think we're eager to get involved, and we're going to wait until it's the right time to get involved, and we stand by, ready, willing, and able to do that as soon as we are given that permission. So it's all good.
Good morning, everybody. With every victim you find, obviously, it's good news. But I'm wondering, this first question for the fire chief: what was the peak number of personnel working the scene, and where are we now? And what is the process of determining when to scale back, and what the timeline might be? Is this going to involve the mayor, for example, or is this just your call?
Well, it's definitely a coordinated effort. So, I mean, the mayor's briefed along the way with everything we're doing, and obviously we're making a decision together in regards to all the assets that are here, federally, state. So, again, I mean, it's just such a collaborative effort in regards to everything that we're doing. In regards to personnel, it's varied throughout. We average for the most part 200 to 250 would be the amount of search teams, again, based on what we were able to access, what we were able to search, with the limitations with the building, the overhead, significant concerns with that collapse and where we could access, and then just all throughout, with the access. It's a very limited access just to get there in regards to resources, in regards to our equipment, heavy equipment, our personnel, and it's always in phases. So obviously when we were aggressive in our search and rescue efforts, as I mentioned all along, as we were delayering the floors, it was a very methodical process in looking for survivors. As we continued along with the process, we incorporate different resources, different tactics, more personnel, some search and rescue, components of our Florida task force, as well as other resources, just personnel manpower to help assist removing debris. So it's just a continuing process that we continue to change our strategies throughout, and that's what you see as well currently today with the delayering process.
So you've got the Israelis already leaving. I'm wondering, the people from out of state, how many of those folks have left? And again, if you might have a more specific number about how many people are still here.
Yes, well, overall, in regards to our task force, we currently have Florida Task Force 1 from Miami-Dade, Florida Task Force 2, led by the City of Miami and other municipal departments, Indiana, Pennsylvania. Virginia is in the process of demobilization, so they've already, in that pipeline, it takes anywhere 24 to 48 hours in regards to demob. Also, New Jersey and Ohio, we have on standby, so they're starting that process. So they're not there per se where they're done with the mission and assisting us, but it's in motion. And we'll just continue that process throughout. We also have, we transitioned in regards to our heavy equipment that came through. So, originally we had a certain vendor, certain components assistant, and now we've transitioned to other vendors, other machinery, large equipment coming on site. And also we're looking at different personnel to utilize to assist with debris removal.
So a month more, 3 more weeks, 2 months?
That's where it's so tough. I know we're looking for a pinpoint, and I just don't want to give a date and then we move one way or the other. And that's why we've always said, 14 to 21 days. Definitely I think we're closer to the 14-day. And it could even move up in regards to fire and our task force. I mean, this is going to be ongoing for a long time. And, obviously Director Ramirez can comment on their side and what involvement they'll have in that time frame. But it's just so difficult to pinpoint, an exact date. I mean, obviously, right now we're full speed still with the search and recovery efforts, and we want to continue, that aspect into every victim's life.
Thank you, Chief. Question.
Oh, sí. Estamos al nivel de 14 millones de libras de concreto y basura.
I guess for the chief, can you just clarify a few things before? First of all, you're now at the point where you're hitting cars in the garage? When did that happen?
Probably about a day or so ago, I guess within the last operational period, I'll say. So within the last 24 hours. Again, with the rubble pile and how we're delayering, it's not an even per se floors. So it all depends in different areas. So on certain grids, you know, we'd say of how we're doing the recovery and our search efforts, as we mentioned earlier. One of those we are, you know, at ground level per se, or in the garage where we are coming across vehicles. As we mentioned, there's still several floors that were within the garage. So we're continuing that delayering of each floor, and but it's all scattered throughout the rubble.
And the Indiana and Pennsylvania teams, when will they be?
We don't have an exact time frame for them yet. You know, again, it's all a process. So the same way it was a process how we scaled up with our local assets, and then our Florida assets, and then, you know, obviously with our federal assets, it's kind of the same process now. So as we go through with our efforts and what we're doing, we will, you know, go through that process of demobilizing each team.
The last thing to clarify, you said 14 to 21 days, now it's closer to 14. What's the start of that time period? July 5th, or what's that mean?
Yeah, I don't have the exact date. I guess we're looking for windows. You know, we can provide that information of where we came to that original 14, 21 days, and you know, but again, that's just what I want to emphasize. It's tough for us to really try to pinpoint, you know, exactly, you know, time frame of what we expect that, you know, we'll be able to delay all the debris.
And we'll have the last 3 questions right here.
It's a two-part question. One is, how many pieces of heavy equipment are your guys using? And number two is, I know that your crews are very well trained, they know what they're doing, and they're trying very carefully to treat every big recovery with respect. But when you're using these heavy cranes, how do you avoid accidentally scraping up some of the cranes with it?
Well, we have anywhere from 7 to 10 pieces of heavy equipment on scene. You know, it's been on scene throughout. And so basically the key is we have our task force members embedded. So besides them cutting and removing different debris and physically delayering with their, you know, portable equipment that they can bring on, as we're using this heavy machinery, they're there spotting. So they're throughout. So it's still a very slow process. You know, it's not, you know, where we're just moving debris where it's, I don't know if we have footage, but on the Alpha pile, the building that was demolished, you know, obviously there it's a different component. So you see how the heavy machinery is able to move that debris in a rapid pace. On the rubble pile where we're still in our search and recovery, it's still a methodical process. So the crews are there, they're monitoring, you know, they're hand digging and doing other aspects as well. And as we're delayering, it's a slow process. So obviously if there's anything that we see or whichever, it's stopped, and then they will continue hand removing debris that way.
Sorry, Chief.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wait for a second. If I can clarify, you talked about your troop movements. Is it fair to say that there are fewer personnel searching today than there were at the height of search and rescue? And also, I think Mayor Burkett talked about the stairwells. If you could maybe elaborate a little bit, if you were hoping to perhaps find more people in voids like stairwells and maybe did not, is that understand by that?
Yes, I mean, definitely, you know, within our search and with the process, I mean, there's, you know, definitely skills that we're trained on, techniques that we look for. Due to the time when this occurred, due to the possible notifications, you know, the stairwell is always a primary, you know, just the stability of how the stairwell is built. It's hardened better than other areas per se. So with a collapse, that's where you have your greatest void space, greatest possibility. Unfortunately, the way with this type of collapse and everything coming down and another building sharing where we found a stairwell in another location per se, and also collapse and pancake, it just, you know, it minimized, you know, those opportunities. But obviously when we truly could get there and locate, and as we delayed and going further down, you know, that's where we're always optimistic in regards to our search efforts, you know, as well as bedrooms, you know. So that's the other aspect that we look, and, you know, those are primary areas that we search, but then, you know, then we have to delay other ways. So that we go down hallways, and, you know, I mean, this is what all the task force teams are trained to do. This is, you know, the processes, you know, that we go through, and that's, you know, obviously what we exercise throughout and continue now even in the recovery efforts. In regards to the personnel, you know, we're pretty much the same. I mean, it's we've continued throughout the process as we're able to gain more access, as we're able to do more things. But the run-in numbers have been the same. We've been holding, units to say in regards to continue with the delayering and not stopping that. And so, the average has been the same, and it's going to continue to decrease over the next few days.
I follow with, I think the mayor was talking about harsh, describing conditions as harsh as they've been, and we've heard about when there's no rain, there can be a lot more dust. What other types of rough conditions are experienced today that perhaps are more difficult than yesterday and the previous week?
Well, you can imagine the buildings contained, in addition to people, all kinds of food and perishables and all of that stuff. All of those contents have been in that site now for quite a long time, and that just adds to the difficulty of the recovery. And my point in bringing that up was that we've got our superheroes out there that are doing a job like you can't imagine, and the circumstances don't get any easier. It doesn't get any less difficult, and finding victims doesn't. That experience doesn't change for our search and rescue folks, and it takes a toll. But you've got to love the heart that they're putting into this, and we're all very grateful.
And final question.
Good morning. Two questions. The first is about the accounted for. It sounds like the number accounted for went up by 17 in the past 2 days, which I guess means the overall potential number of victims has gone down by that much. That seems significant. Can you talk about that? And are you actually calling people and finding them living elsewhere? And then my second question is about the belongings you're finding. I think the mayor said you're finding rings and things like that. Can you describe that process? Are you putting them in a room, having family members come in and claim them? Can you talk about that?
Sure. In your first part of the question, obviously as we recover more family members and we identify the family members, that changes the numbers. And then we have that small amount of individuals that we can't get any family contact with, which is roughly about 5 that we've been working. The other ones have police reports to them, and then as we do the recoveries, you'll see the numbers start to shrink and marginalize or be marginal. In terms of the property, we have a very elaborate, systematic process in place. We have a property and evidence section that's built there on the site. As property is recovered, and especially the religious property, we handle it with care. We try to recover everything. We catalog, document. They're put in containers and bins. We have a legal process in place. So as we move forward during this process, there'll be an estate process, and then there'll be of those that are the survivors, their property as well. Whatever we could recover, those will be returned. I know that we have a database in place where family members can upload not only their missing family member, but property and photos. So all that's being cataloged. And at a later date, those things will be matched together, and we'll try to return as much. We're going to return everything that we can possibly recover. And our rabbis the other day got a nice tour to see how diligent, how careful these detectives are working to recover, these artifacts that are very important to families. It could be the smallest little thing that to a common person, it just looks like a little container, but it really means generations. It's very spiritual, and I'm just so impressed. Our officers are learning so much about culture, that there's just so many dynamics here with the sadness and the sorrow. There's like a unity component. We learn about each other, so we definitely respect that and honor that.
So you'll bring the families in, but you haven't done that yet. You're collecting all of them.
That'll be at a later date, yes. We'll have a process in place, and we'll follow a legal process to do that.
I just like to add that I took a tour of that facility that Director Ramirez is talking about, and it's amazing because the rabbis come in around the clock. They sit there and they adjudicate, the things that are religiously significant, and those are handled in a very different way. I have a picture here of Commander Golan with his glove actually retrieving a ring that he believes belongs to Brad Cohen, who is the daughter of the 12-year-old girl that I found praying at the site over her father a few days into the tragedy, who gave me this little bracelet, which I wear all the time now. But it's amazing the connection that there is between the search and rescue teams and the families. they're just not out there disconnected and looking for stuff. They actually know what they're looking for. They know where they're looking for it, and they're expecting to find these things. And in this case, they did. So the commander was very, very proud of the fact that his teams are so precise. And again, that's just another amazing attribute that we need to be aware of with respect to our fantastic search and rescue crews.
Thank you, everyone. That is the last conference for today. Please stay tuned to our social media channels for any updates. Thank you.